Hey guys, welcome back to Out Jeeping. Today we're going to be rebuilding rear brake calipers out of a 98 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I'm going to be using this on my Chrysler 8 1/4 to put in my 2001 Jeep Cherokee. I'm doing the disc brake conversion. I got these off of eBay, but basically they're from Parts Jeep. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is remove the pins. Since mine move freely, I'm able to push them out. They just move right out of the boot like that. Then I'll do the other side. Once you got both pins out, you can go ahead and take the rubber boot that was holding in the pins. And to do that, you want to be very careful because I want to still use my rubber boots since they have no cracks or anything. So you want to make sure you pinch it and very slowly pull it through on either side. Alright, now that we got both the pins and rubber boots out, we're going to go ahead and take this flexible brake line out, and along with that we're going to take the bleeder, which is down here. Well, that was a lot tougher than the other one. Now we're going to go ahead and get this brake hose off. Alright, now that you got the brake line off, you want to make sure you don't lose the copper washers right here because those are important, and make sure you have a rag because there might be some brake fluid still in there. So now the next thing we got to do is take the piston out. In order to do that, there's a little trick you can do is take some compressed air and blow the piston out. And actually you might want to keep that bleeder in there until the piston is out, so that way it can hold pressure to be able to push it out. Alright, so when getting the piston out, I use my air sprayer, but I found out it doesn't like to hold pressure if it doesn't have a rubber tip. So what I did as an alternative is I took a valve stem that was laying around. I basically just cut the tip off, jammed it in there, and then used a tire filler up thing, and I was able to take the piston out. So now the next thing we have to do is take this dust boot off, and then we're going to have to be able to take the seal inside of there out. Alright, so now to take the seal out, I have the caliper in the vise. Basically just using a hammer and a putty knife and gently tapping this corner up of the seal. I'm going to work my way around. And then soon it should pop up. Alright, so now the seal's out. So now we can go ahead and take the inner seal out. You want to think if you can get with your fingernail, otherwise just use a small object like a screwdriver or a dull one, because you don't want to scratch up the bore, otherwise you'll have some problems. Alright, so I was able to get the inner seal out with the screwdriver. Make sure not to scratch up the bore of the cylinder, otherwise you'll have some problems. So now I'm going to go ahead and take some brake cleaner, spray this whole thing, and then wire brush the outside so I can get ready for paint. Basically just using a wire brush on my drill here, and then in the smaller areas I might use a wire brush on a Dremel. Alright, so I went ahead and got the caliper all cleaned up. I ended up sandblasting instead of using a wire brush because it went a lot faster, and I got the equipment right here. So I'm going to go ahead and primer this with some high heat rust-oleum primer, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint it with some high heat paint because I've heard that these get hot and I don't want the paint chipping off at all. One more thing before you go ahead and start painting is to mask off the holes that you took out for the brake line and bleeder. I just stuffed some paper towel in there, and same with the piston hole. And you want to make sure you mask that off because you don't want any paint at all to get in there. Alright, now that we got the brake calipers all painted up, we can go ahead and start assembling them. I went ahead and got some new seals, basically the main inner seal, then we got a dust boot. And I also went ahead and bought some new pistons because I forget what material they're made out of, but on this one you can see it's sort of chipped away, which isn't good. And same with this one, but it's more on the lip here. So now we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is put the new seals in. So before we go ahead and install the seal, we want to make sure everything's lubed up because you don't want anything going in dry, otherwise you could ruin a seal possibly. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take some brake fluid on my finger and get that groove inside of the bore all lubed up. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the seal. Alright, now we can start to fit this into that groove. There we go. Okay, so now before putting the dust boot in, we're going to actually put the piston in. We want to make sure this gets lubed up too. So I'm just using some brake fluid again, all around the edges, and then we're going to basically press it in. This could be difficult, but you want to make sure it's straight as possible so you don't mess up any of the seals. So if you're having any trouble pushing in the piston like I did, I went ahead and used a C-clamp and basically just a old used brake pad here so that it helped keep the piston nice and straight, and basically all you got to do is tighten it up and the piston goes in slowly. Okay, so now with the dust boot, all we got to do is just fit into place. There's a metal ring around here, and that basically goes down into there first. So we just got to press it in from all sides, make sure it goes in straight. And then you want to take something dull like the end of a screwdriver and tap it in so everything's flush along the caliper. So that way nothing punctures, because you don't want anything sharp like that. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we want to get this dust boot around the piston here. I can show you there's a little lip right here that the dust boot will fit right into. So you can work it with your fingers, otherwise you might have to push out your piston once again with compressed air. Make sure not to push it out all the way, but just enough to get this around. And then that should be it for putting the piston back in with all of our new seals. Now when extending the piston, I just have a screwdriver back here so that it doesn't extend all the way, so that I can see where the dust boot will sit into that lip. Alright, now we can go ahead and install our bleeder screw. Now our next step is to reinstall the pins and boots. So I was able to reuse mine. They didn't have any dry rot or cracks in it. I basically just used some dish soap and cleaned them up. So basically all we gotta do is slide them back in. That's that side. Okay, so now we got the pins. Mine are pretty clean. Just took a little wire brush to the edges. And we're actually going to lube them up with some grease. Make sure you get inside the boot, because you don't want these freezing up and rusting at all. That wouldn't be good. We're going to do the same thing with a pin. And then just insert it into the boot. There's kind of a lip on the end, so you make sure it hooks on. Alright, got that side in. Just push it out in the other, and then it should seat right in that groove right there. And then same thing for this side. There. That's how it should move nice and freely, because then as your pad wears, your caliper will be moving back and forth. Alright, so the last thing we need to do is just basically hook up our brake line, and you have to have a copper washer on each side of this brick that goes onto here. And one thing that I noticed is the bolt basically is part of the line, so you have to make sure that this little hole lines up with the little hole inside of this block here. Otherwise you won't have any brakes. So basically you can take a Sharpie, just mark on the bolt where it has to line up with the hose here. Alright, that's it for rebuilding these brake calipers. I want to thank you for watching, and please like this video if it helped you. Please also check out Out Jeeping on YouTube and subscribe for more how-to videos.